What's going on, everybody? Welcome back again to The Haunted Beard. My name is Jake. Thank you for joining me today. Well, we just came through a pretty fantastic year of 2022 as far as horror movies go. A lot of really solid releases last year, and just in case you're curious, I've got just a few movies left on my to-watch list before I drop my best horror movies of 2022 video, but it is coming. Stay tuned, I've got just a few movies left to get through. Today, however, I want to talk about my most anticipated horror movies of 2023. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just go through the schedule of the calendar year and go through the ones that are already scheduled, and then go through, there's probably half of this list is still TBD on the release date. So that's how I'm going to do it. Let's kick this thing off. Here we go. First up on the list, coming out January 27th, is the new film from Brandon Cronenberg, and that is Infinity Pool. And this looks all kinds of bizarre. I watched just part of the trailer. I usually try to avoid most trailers for stuff that I'm looking forward to, but I couldn't help myself. I watched about half of it just to get a little taste for it. But Brandon Cronenberg, as you may know, came out with a film called Possessor a couple years ago, which was like a sci-fi horror, which I was a fan of. And this movie looks wild. This is a horror, sci-fi, mystery thriller starring Mia Goth, who is horror gold at this point, and Alexander Skarsgård. And it's about this couple who go to this like private beach vacation, and a fatal accident exposes the resort's perverse subculture of hedonistic tourism, reckless violence, and surreal horrors. And the good news about this one is it's coming out here in just a few more weeks, so you don't have to wait too long to check it out. But this one is right at the very top of my list. If I was doing a ranking, this would probably be in like a top 5 for my most anticipated. This one looks pretty good. Hopefully it lives up to expectations. But that is Infinity Pool. Let's keep on moving along. Next up, coming out February 3rd, is A Knock at the Cabin. This is the newest film from M. Night Shyamalan, who honestly it's kind of been hit or miss for me. So this one is kind of a 50-50 shot, could go either way. But what really has me intrigued about this one is based off of the book by Paul Tremblay called The Cabin at the End of the World, which I've actually read and thought it was a really solid horror thriller book. And this one tells the story of a girl and her parents vacationing at a cabin who are taken hostage by armed strangers who demand that the family make a choice to avert the apocalypse. And this one's got a pretty intriguing cast: Jonathan Groff, Rupert Grint, Dave Bautista. So this one I don't have super high hopes for, but I'm still kind of got my fingers crossed. I'm hoping that this comes out pretty good. If it's even close to as good as the book, I think I'm going to at least somewhat enjoy this one. But that is A Knock at the Cabin. Next up on March 10th is Scream 6, the next installment in the franchise. This one, though, they're changing it up a little bit, at least in terms of the location. They're moving out of Woodsboro, and this one is taking place right in New York City. Definitely got me intrigued. They just dropped a teaser trailer for this not too long ago. That's all I'm going to watch for this thing at all. I don't want to know any more details, but it's got the similar cast from the last film: Melissa Barrera, Jenna Ortega, and Courtney Cox as well. Also, the character of Kirby is coming back, Hayden Panettiere, so looking forward to that. Scream 6, I hope it's good. Next up, coming out on April 7th, is The Pope's Exorcist, and this was directed by Julius Avery, who did a film a few years ago called Overlord, which I thought wasn't great, but I had a pretty fun time with it. But this one stars Russell Crowe, and this one tells the story of real-life figure Father Gabriel Amorth, a priest who acted as chief exorcist of the Vatican and who performed more than 100,000 exorcisms in his lifetime. Exorcism movies are a bit hit or miss for me, but the fact that this is based on a real figure is pretty interesting. Russell Crowe, director, I'm intrigued on this one. So again, this is The Pope's Exorcist, coming out on April 7th. Next up, coming out on April 14th, is Renfield, and this is a comedy fantasy horror. Tells the story of Dracula's henchman, Renfield, played by Nicholas Hoult. And the only other thing I gotta say about this is Nicolas Cage is playing Dracula. I'm sold. April 21st sees the release of Evil Dead Rises. And this is the story of two estranged sisters who meet together for a reunion, and unfortunately the flesh-possessing demons are back at it again. And so I'm definitely curious to see what happens with this one, what the director Lee Cronin does with it. I was a pretty good fan of the remake. Obviously, it doesn't quite touch the originals, but this one definitely has my interest. hopefully they do something good with it. All right, next we're jumping all the way to August 11th, and that is The Last Voyage of the Demeter. And this was directed by Andre Overdahl, who did a film called The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which I was quite a fan of. And this one's based on a single chapter, The Captain's Log, from Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. The film is set aboard the Russian ship the Demeter, and it details the strange events that befell the doomed crew as they attempt to survive the ocean voyage. No trailer and hardly any images have been released from this one yet, but just based on the premise and the director alone, this one's got my interest. September 15th sees the release of A Haunting in Venice, and this is the third installment of what has been the Agatha Christie Hercule Poirot trilogy, starring Kenneth Branagh as also the director, but as the title character, and this one is geared a little bit more towards horror than the previous two installments. And this one sees the detective, now retired and living in exile, who reluctantly attends a seance. But when one of the guests is murdered, it is up to the former detective to once again uncover the killer. And I'm a sucker for these types of movies. I love the character of Hercule Poirot. I love the murder mystery genre. I've read Agatha Christie's novels, at least some of them anyway, because there's a lot. And I'm a fan, so I'm definitely looking forward to this one. And the final film on the schedule comes out October 27th, and that is Saw 10. And I'll be honest, I don't really have super high expectations for this one. I wouldn't even say I have barely moderate expectations, but I am curious enough to at least give it a watch. There's not really much known about it yet, other than somehow they are bringing Tobin Bell back. We'll see how that works. And also they've announced that Shawnee Smith as Amanda will be back as well. And so we'll see what happens. All right, so the remaining movies on the list do not have a release date yet, but I'm going to just go through them nonetheless. So first up is The Outwaters, and this is a found footage film that actually hit the festival circuit, played in a few different film festivals last year. This one's a horror sci-fi thriller, and it tells the story of these, I believe, 4 friends who are out in the desert, traveling around, and I've looked at a couple of the reviews, and they said that this thing is just absolute insanity. And so it has been on my radar for a little while now. If you know me, you know I'm a bit of a sucker for found footage movies, so The Outwaters looks pretty crazy. No release date yet, but as soon as it comes out, I'll be checking it out. Next up is Salem's Lot, and this is based on the novel by Stephen King. Tells the story of a town where people turn into vampires. If it's got Stephen King's name on it, I'm at least curious about it. His book-to-film adaptations are a bit hit or miss, but this one's at least on my radar. We'll see what happens. The next movie I'm looking forward to is called I Saw the TV Glow. And the reason why I'm interested in this is it's directed by Jane Schoenbrunn, who directed the film from last year, We're All Going to the World's Fair, which I didn't love, but I thought it was very unique, had a very kind of creative voice. It didn't quite come together for me, but the director there showed, I think, just kind of a unique approach and a unique voice there that it just really got me curious. So I was interested to see what they were going to bring next. And this is it. It tells the story about these 2 young friends who bond over this sort of mysterious, scary TV show. That's really all we know about it. But based on the director's previous film, I'm definitely curious to check this one out. Next is Love Lies Bleeding. And this is more of a romantic thriller starring Kristen Stewart, Ed Harris, and Jenna Malone. But the real thing that got my interest in this one is that it's directed by Rose Glass, who directed my favorite film from 2021, and that is Saint Maud. So she won me over with that thing. I am definitely interested to see what she brings with this movie. So whenever it gets a release date, I'll be checking it out. All right, 3 movies left. Next, I want to talk to you about Shelby Oaks, and you might recognize that because it is directed by, I'll just call him YouTube star, YouTube film critic turned film director Chris Stuckman, who you've probably heard of if you are even the slightest bit interested in film reviews and film criticism, stuff like that. And it's been really cool because he's been posting videos. You've been able to follow along on the journey. So this one doesn't have a release date yet, but it is a horror film. And man, I can't wait to see what this guy brings. I've seen one of his short films already. He's very talented, so I'm definitely looking forward to Shelby Oaks. I can't wait to see it. And now I saved these final 2 for last because I would say these are probably my 2 most anticipated movies of the year. The first is Maxine, which is capping off the X trilogy directed by Ty West, starring Mia Goth. It's a continuation of X. And this time takes place in the 80s. It follows the character of Maxine to Hollywood as she continues to try to find fame. And man, I've been a huge fan of, I was a huge fan of X, a big fan of Pearl, so I can't wait to see what Ty West does with Maxine. No release date yet, but you can be sure as soon as this thing comes out, I'll be there. And finally, we've got Ari Aster's new movie, Beau is Afraid. And this one is described as a sort of nightmare comedy. I think it's a bit of a drama, a comedy, but also a horror as well. And so this one's just got me very intrigued. I think it's at least somewhat based on one of his short films. It tells a story of this like a decade spanning portrait of this like entrepreneur played by Joaquin Phoenix. So great main lead right there. Joaquin Phoenix is fantastic. So Ari Aster, one of the best working in the biz right now. So as soon as this thing comes out, man, I'm just super excited for it. So those are all the movies I'm looking forward to. I hope you enjoy that list. I hope maybe you discovered something new that you hadn't heard of yet. And so 2023 is looking to be another great year. Fingers crossed. I hope it's as good as I want it to be, I guess. But yeah, that's all I got for you today. If you like content like this, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. This is what I do on The Haunted Beard. It's all horror and thriller movie content coming at you. So hit that button, and I'll see you next time on The Haunted Beard.